There are many ways to work out your chest. However, not all these exercises are the best for a beginner to do in the gym. So I'll be ranking 10 popular chest exercises based on practicality for beginners and overall effectiveness for building muscle. So the incline dumbbell bench press is good for upper pec development and also the overall chest. Pretty simple exercise, just make sure you have the bench set up at 30 degrees and going through the full range of motion. The one downside for a beginner is potentially getting the weights up onto the starting position and making sure that you're dropping the weights safely. And the use of dumbbells will allow you to work on muscle imbalances. So with that said, I'm going to put this in the B tier. All right, next we have the barbell incline bench press, pretty similar to the dumbbell incline bench press. We're just using a barbell, which in most cases you could actually lift more weight with. However, the range of motion is a little bit less than the dumbbells, and if you did have to bail, it would be a little more challenging. So having a partner here as a beginner would definitely be ideal. Overall, this is kind of something that may trigger the shoulder if you did have a past shoulder injury, but overall, good for building muscle. It's just a little bit more complex for a beginner because of the barbell. It may be a little intimidating. So with that said, I'm going to put this in the C tier. So now moving on to the flat bench variations. First we have the dumbbell bench press. So I'd argue this is more practical for a beginner because it's the overall chest development. We're not trying to emphasize a certain area of the chest. For example, in the incline bench press, we were emphasizing the upper chest. But as a beginner, if you're new to the gym, there's no real reason to focus on the upper chest right off the bat. So that's kind of how I differentiate the two. So with that said, I'm going to put this one in the A tier. And now on the barbell flat bench press, good for building the chest. However, as a beginner, not having a spotter or not knowing exactly what to do if you can't get the bar up isn't exactly the best situation to be in. And then you also have the muscle building aspect. You can't get as much a range of motion as using the dumbbells. And just like the incline barbell bench press, the shoulders may be an issue if you did have a past shoulder injury on this exercise because of the more fixed path you're set on. So with that said, I'm going to put this in the B tier. All right, now we have the decline variations. So we're going to start off with the dumbbell decline chest press. And as a beginner, the practicality of this is pretty low, just because of the awkwardness to get into position on the decline bench. And then just the exercise itself, there's no real reason to target the lower pecs, which is what this exercise does. Still does the overall chest, just a little bit emphasis on the lower pecs. As a beginner, there's no real reason to target the lower pecs. As a beginner starting on the gym, I'm going to put this in the D tier. And now the barbell decline bench press, a little bit better because the bar is already set up for you. You just have to unrack it as opposed to getting in position with the dumbbells or grabbing the dumbbells off the ground. This one is a little bit easier because you simply just have to grab the barbell. But again, with barbells, the shoulders may be an issue and getting stuck at the bottom is another issue for a beginner. And because we're doing it at the decline angle, we're emphasizing the lower pecs, which again isn't really necessary for a beginner to focus on when just starting out in the gym. So with that said, I'm going to put this in the C tier. Moving right along to the push-ups. Push-ups are a great exercise for a beginner because it's a pretty simple exercise. You could always regress to the incline push-up or the push-ups from the knees to get the form down and then progress to the regular push-up. So very beginner friendly, very practical. You could always work at these at home as well. But once you get to the point where you're doing a high amount of reps and you're just not feeling like it's doing much, that's when it becomes an issue for the muscle building aspect. But for a beginner, this is definitely a great exercise. So I'm going to put this in the B tier, just because you can only progress so much with the push-up. All right, next we have the dumbbell fly. The dumbbell fly isn't the best exercise for a beginner because of the position you're putting your shoulder in with the dumbbells, and every beginner may not know exactly which weight to start with. They may think they could do more and then potentially injuring their shoulder. But either way, the dumbbell chest fly isn't the best exercise to build muscle. And this is because at the top range of the motion, you're not getting much tension. You're really getting it at the bottom half, which is where it's a little bit more risky on the shoulders. So with that said, I'm going to put this in the F tier. All right, now onto the cable chest fly. The cable chest fly is a little bit better just because you get a little more guidance on your range of motion, and you also get the constant tension from the cables. Obviously, there's still the same issue of going too far back with your shoulders if you don't know the proper range of motion. And this exercise is great for building muscle, and you could also easily progress with the weight using the weight stack. So with that said, this is going to be much higher than the dumbbell variation. I'm going to put this in the B tier. All right, now in rounding off the list, we have the chest press machine. This is a great exercise for a beginner to incorporate into their training program because it has stability and you can also add a lot of weight to it without the risk of injury. That's because you're on a fixed plane of motion and you really can't go too wrong with dropping the weights in a poor fashion. Also, this specific machine allows you to work your arms independent from each other, so you can also work on muscle imbalances. So it's great for building muscle and it's pretty practical for a beginner. So I'm going to put this in the A tier. All right, thanks guys for watching today's video. Hope you found it helpful if you're a beginner in the gym, and we'll see you next time.